The gentleman from California is recognized.
Madam Speaker, let me first extend my appreciation to my good friend from Rochester, New York, Mrs. Slaughter, for yielding me the customary 30 minutes. And with that, I yield myself such time as I might consume and ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
The gentleman is recognized.
Madam Speaker, last Sunday, when we opened debate here on the rule, I opened by condemning the attacks that have been made on members of this institution, their families, and their staffs. Unfortunately, it is something with which all of us who've been privileged to serve in elective office and as members of Congress in particular have had to face for many years. I will reiterate, Madam Speaker, violence or the threat of violence is simply unconscionable, and we all join together in calling for an immediate end to these types of utterly unacceptable acts. Madam Speaker, last Sunday I also predicted that we would be back here voting once again on the reconciliation bill. And here we are. The need for another vote is further demonstration of just how flawed the tactics of the Democrats in charge of Congress have been. It shouldn't surprise anyone, Madam Speaker, that the reconciliation bill was found to violate Senate rules, as traditionally has been the case, with only the exception in 1983. Madam Speaker, no legislation of this magnitude can be slapped together at the last minute and then withstand scrutiny. Our re-vote today is just further evidence of the perils of the refusal of the Democrats in charge to act in a bipartisan and open way. We've been debating the issue of health care reform in the Congress for a long period of time. As a nation, we've been struggling with the very serious issue of increasing access to quality care for many, many, many years. We all want to expand coverage and improve quality for the American people. There are a number of key reforms that enjoy broad bipartisan support that would bring us much, much closer to that goal. And yet, despite these opportunities for bipartisanship, Madam Speaker, the Democrats in charge insisted on forcing through the most partisan and costly bill possible. And despite all the time that's been spent on this issue, they insisted on forcing through a reconciliation bill that was largely written the night before we voted on it. Again, Madam Speaker, this was written in large part the night before we voted on it. And that's why it should be no surprise, as those of us who last Sunday predicted, that we'd be back here. Less than a week after that vote, serious mistakes in the legislative package have already been discovered, as I've said. Today's underlying package, as I said at the outset, has been returned to the House because it contained provisions that violated Senate rules. Far more significant, however, Madam Speaker, are the mistakes that have been uncovered relating to a key provision in the Senate health care bill that is now law. Mistakes that will not be fixed today, and I underscore mistakes that will not be fixed today. One of the centerpieces of that legislation was a provision to ensure that no child is denied coverage for a pre-existing condition. This is an issue that again enjoys overwhelming bipartisan support. I believe very passionately in the need to ensure that no one is denied coverage for pre-existing conditions. Now, Madam Speaker, had we taken a responsible, step-by-step approach to reform, this provision dealing with pre-existing conditions could have been signed into law months ago. But because the Democrats in charge shunned bipartisan cooperation and an open, transparent process, forcing through a hyper-partisan bill with no opportunity for open debate or any amendment, their $1 trillion bill passed Congress without any real accountability. The result? They botched the language on pre-existing conditions, and we now know, Madam Speaker, that children will not get the coverage that they were promised. This is the inevitable result of a closed, partisan process. Even, Madam Speaker, even the good ideas that are put out there that both Democrats and Republicans alike can come to an agreement on are undermined by a lack of scrutiny and transparency. Their bill was certainly filled with a lot of terrible ideas, spending $1 trillion we don't have and hiring tens of thousands of new IRS agents to investigate hardworking Americans ranks at the very top of that list. But even the provisions like pre-existing conditions that had bipartisan support are being undermined by shoddy work. While the legal experts sort out the mess that was made of the legislative language, job creators are assessing just how much damage has been done to them. Today, the Wall Street Journal pointed out that companies large and small are taking stock of the new taxes that have been imposed and what the impact will be. Now, we had an exchange upstairs about the fact that we've seen the stock market go up, and we all know that the stock market has gone up. But that does not belie the fact that Caterpillar will face $100 million in new taxes in the first year alone. The medical device company Medtronic fears that it may have to lay off 1,000 workers in order to pay the new taxes. Now, Madam Speaker, with the national unemployment rate, as we all know, hovering just under 10%, this could not be a worse time to impose job-killing tax increases. The prospect of crippling new taxes and further job losses is not acceptable. We should focus on creating, not losing, good private sector jobs. The process of reforming the so-called reform bill and undoing the damage that has been done will take years, wasting untold taxpayer dollars that we cannot afford. And, Madam Speaker, wasting precious time while the American people wait for real reform that actually improves access to quality health care is a waste. It shouldn't be done, and this is a tragically missed opportunity. To the many Americans who were outraged by this bill and the process by which it was considered, and by the way, we're here under what's known as martial law rule. We just completed our meeting in the Rules Committee a few minutes ago, and without any consideration, we've come right down to the House floor. So people are outraged with this process. That's played a role in creating the anger that's there. I can only say that there are still some members of Congress, and I'm one of them, who believe in bipartisan cooperation. And we believe, as was promised in A New Direction for America, that then Minority Leader Pelosi put forth for the American people and said she was going to have when she took the oath here in January of 2007, an open, transparent process. And to many Americans who had high hopes for a true reform bill, I will say that there are still some members of Congress who will fight for real reform, even if the Democrats in charge will not do that. We will fight to ensure that all Americans have effective guarantees of coverage despite pre-existing conditions. We'll fight for meaningful lawsuit abuse reform, and we will work to allow small businesses and states to band together to offer better and more affordable coverage. Madam Speaker, we will work to ensure that government bureaucrats never come between patients and doctors. We will make sure that no one will be forced to give up their current coverage if they do not so choose, and that those who have diligently saved in their health savings accounts aren't in any way punished. If we can abandon the failed tactics that the Democrats in charge have put forward and work in a bipartisan and open fashion, these are the kinds of real reforms that can be enacted so that all Americans will have access to quality, affordable health insurance. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.